Welcome to David's Life and Observation with your host, David Welch. Today's episode is circling around what's really going on, not just in the media, but what's really going on in cities across America. Primarily, what we've seen in the news lately: Phoenix, Texas. A lot of the southern states have a huge issue with civil liberties and civil rights and law enforcement that is woefully ignorant. And they're not dumb people. No, they're people who have really taken on the tact of authoritarianism, taken on the negative aspects and the fascistic aspects of law enforcement that spins very negatively with society. Here's what I mean by that. In Phoenix, where I'm living at now, we have officers that drew down on a family with a little girl inside the car for a $1 doll. And it wasn't just for that. Apparently, according to the story, they had actually committed a series of thefts. Regardless, actually, of the thefts, and people don't like being stolen from. Nobody likes being stolen from. Nobody likes having their stuff taken from them. Don't get me wrong, that is illegal, and that is something that is frowned upon in society. However, showing up and drawing weapons when there's been no weapons displayed by the family, there's been no weapons displayed by anybody that was in that vehicle. And not just that, when you have video of them being brutal to the family and holding weapons to them and them pleading for law enforcement not to shoot them, it doesn't look good. And not only does it not look good, it's just wrong. There has been no, up until then, as far as I understood, there was no report of a weapon from the guy in the vehicle or the family in the vehicle. So why would law enforcement show up, guns drawn, and point them at a car instead of going up to them and having a discussion? Now, I understand, be vigilant. You can stand at an angle away from, the door. You can do whatever it is you think is necessary. Show up in force with several officers, whatever you have to do to eliminate the need to draw your weapon in the first place. We have in the news where a man was tased repeatedly by law enforcement in D.C. They were trying to spin it that guy was resisting. No, he was actually on scene trying to discuss the egregious amount of force used on a teenager, and then because they didn't like him being there, they didn't like him in the area, they turned around and arrested him for getting in their way, for voicing his opinion, essentially. And we live in a society where, unfortunately, a lot of people tend to think that we can't film without permission. A lot of people tend to think that we can't do things that we're inherently allowed to do without permission. Excuse me, guys. I sneezed. Sucked. But anyway, so a lot of people have a preconception or a notion that we are not allowed to video record, and a lot of elderly people and older people have this huge misconception that we need their fucking permission when we're out in public to video record them. No, we don't. Your geriatric ass just does not understand. I'm sorry, you don't. You have been brainwashed to think that you don't have the freedoms you do to record what you want to record out in public. Now, I do understand that given certain situations, it may not be prudent to videotape or record or make it obvious that you're recording, let's say somebody in medical distress. And we have a fucking rise of EMS people and firefighters and even law enforcement that think that they are in some way helping the victims by not allowing people to video record what's going on. In fact, you are essentially covering up whatever crimes you probably are committing. And of course, nobody likes accountability. Nobody does. But it's the duty of the citizenry to keep law enforcement accountable. You may be thinking, your law enforcement ass head, that that's not true, but you're fucking stupid if you think you guys are the only entities that are allowed to investigate you. Like, if you think your own police department is the end-all be-all when it comes to how to discipline you and how to keep you accountable, you're fucking stupid and woefully ignorant. You're really out of bounds when you think that Joe and Jane Citizen can't come at you in a court of law despite your police department saying you did nothing wrong. Just because your police department is backing you up 100% doesn't mean the law does. It just doesn't. All that means is you have a community of law enforcement officers that will stop at nothing to protect each other from getting in trouble, stop at nothing from being prosecuted. And you have a law enforcement officers that have literally shot unarmed, hands up individuals who are getting their jobs back after they were somehow found to be innocent of the crime of shooting the motherfucker that was not armed. It's beyond reasoning, beyond my understanding and everybody else's understanding, how you are not in jail. Because if it was me and I shot somebody that was unarmed, I'd be in prison for the rest of my life. The fact that some officers just lose their job and not rot in a jail cell is beyond my understanding. And people are, quite frankly, getting a little bit to the point where they're done. You don't have the sympathy of the community at large when an officer goes down anymore. You just don't. I don't care how good you want to portray that officer. I don't care how good of a person they actually were in real life. I don't care how good of a job they actually did. For the large majority of Americans, they're like, so what? And it's because of the lack of accountability that the law enforcement community has. You have 72 officers or some high-ass number like that in the Philly Police Department right now on paid leave because they were openly racist and bigoted. Why the fuck would a city employ people like that? I don't care who the fuck you are. I don't care what rank. I don't care how long you've been in law enforcement. If you have these views openly and you have such a negative bias and you're racist inherently and things like that, you shouldn't have a badge. You shouldn't be able to hold a fucking gun at all. And I'm speaking from the Joe and Jane Citizen point of view of, hey, why are we going to have you keep us accountable in the street when you're obviously racist and you have a bias against black people? If you look at, a couple of their arrest records, and it shows that there's inherent bias. We've seen it in Boston. Boston doesn't even fucking hide it anymore. They're like, yeah, we go into some areas over here just because it's blacks. And you have that in Chicago. You have in Chicago where you have law enforcement that will literally roll up, jump out of their car, pat everybody down real quick, check them for warrants, and then fucking cut out of there because they know they're doing wrong. Same thing in New York. You have what are called jump out boys. They know they're doing wrong. They know they're fucking up. They know they're not doing what is right in the situation. That's why as soon as cameras come out and you're filming them, they get the fuck out of there. They don't want anything to do with what's going on. They don't want to be like, oh, I'm not part of this. That's why they're wearing plain clothes a lot of the times too. They're wearing plain clothes so that you don't identify them. They won't give you their name, their badge number, a card, nothing like that. They're under no legal obligation to do so. Now, there may be a department policy that says, yes, we need you to identify to, Joe and Jane Citizen, but you don't have to. They don't have to according to the law. There's no law that says they emphatically have to identify themselves to the citizenry, and that's wrong. That is inherently wrong. The police department and police officers should live in a state of perpetual fear from citizens, because that's the role, that's the way our founding fathers worked the framework of government. That government should fear the people, and they should do the people's bidding, not us do their bidding. Not us appear to be ruled by a aristocratic class of politician and a fucking standing army that is our police departments and our sheriff's deputies and our constables, or whatever mechanism of authority they want to give themselves. You have people who are judges right now who are woefully ignorant. You have a judge that literally just got a DUI case, yet her ass still sits the bench. How? How's that possible? How's that a thing? Maybe she found a loophole in the law and she's still allowed to sit the bench. You have a family court system that is so unconstitutional, it is beyond my understanding of how it's even possible to exist. Why have people... Now, I do understand a need for CPS and a need for adverse action against horrible fucking parents. Now, to the credit of some officers, and I saw this video recently, they found a baby wrapped in a plastic bag, and my heart went out for those officers. That's terrifying to find. That's terrifying to see what they see on a day-to-day basis, because they deal with a lot of fucking assholes in society who murder people, or they're just shitty ass human beings that assault people, and they steal, and they're horrible. But there is a larger picture as to why a lot of those things happen, and I'll get into that a little bit later, or I might just skip it for another video. But the real point of this video is to demonstrate that the disconnect between law enforcement and the community at large is so great now that there is going to be a larger effect. Here's what I mean. There is going to be an all-out pitched battle between citizens and law enforcement. Now, there's a lot of law enforcement out there that were like, fuck yeah, that's what we want. We want to fuck you up. We want to kick down doors. In fact, they gloat about that shit. They really do. High five, and they'll, like, knuckle bump and shit when they've raided people and they've terrorized the fuck out of people. In Chicago, they literally have so many cases where they got the wrong fucking house. They even talk about it on body camera. They're like, oh, he got us the wrong house, but we're still going to search anyway, because fuck their rights. Fuck them. Right? And it's this mentality of, we can get away with anything we want, that emboldens law enforcement officers to do what they do. A little bit about my case, right? Colleen, Fort Hood, and Copper's Cove is in what we call a legal desert. A legal desert is a term used by some to describe an area of the country where the lawyers you need, the protections you need under the law, just don't exist. They don't. They have such a mechanism in that area, especially with the family court. They have such a kangaroo court situation that they are cycling so many people through their doors, and they're making a fuck ton of money doing it, because they put the parents in a situation where they cannot defend themselves. They either give them woefully incompetent lawyers, or they give them lawyers that are so bought into the system that they know they're going to profit from it. They want to keep their clients as long as possible, even if their clients are innocent of any wrongdoing. There was literally like several situations where we had conversations with people who were wronged by law enforcement, who had their rights trampled, yet somehow they were still in the family court system, and their kids were stripped away from them. Kind of like what happened to me. And my kids were stripped away from me for 6 fucking months. 6 months. I'm sorry, but the city of Copper's Cove has their day coming in court. It's coming. On the 1st, I'm very, very much intending to file my notice of claim against the city. I'm going to file my claim. I'm putting together a longer, larger narrative to provide a couple lawyers that I'm talking to with the information needed to help me litigate and win the case. But it's been challenging to even find a lawyer. I still don't have one. Yeah, I don't have a lawyer. I have a couple that I'm talking to that want more information for me to give them, but they still may say, you know what, we just can't help you because we just don't have the resources, we don't have the availability in our schedule, whatever it is, that whatever reason they decide to not help me. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I don't have a claim or that I don't have a justifiable case for them to prosecute or to help me litigate. They just don't have the time nor ability to do it. And that's unfortunate. And there are a lot of people that the Texas Civil Rights Project and a couple other people and a couple other organizations that deal with civil rights in Texas could help, but there are literally just no fucking resources. So you have people who are getting their rights trampled on, who are forced into therapy when they don't need it. They're forced into doing these services before you're ever convicted of anything. Before you're ever convicted in, what the fuck county is that? Coryell County. So in Coryell County, before you're ever convicted of a crime, before you're ever convicted of child endangerment, whatever have you, they want you to start services right away so it looks good in front of the judge. Even if you didn't commit a crime, even if you didn't do anything, even if you didn't even deserve to be detained, raided, whatever have you, whatever reason that CPS uses to get your kids, they want you to start services right away in order for you to see your kids. And they hold that over you. They will literally hold your kids over you in a hostage-like situation, because essentially the state is holding your kids hostage, and they want parents to bow down and do whatever it is they want them to do, even if they've never been charged with a crime or they've never been convicted. Like, up until you're handed down that conviction, you haven't committed a crime, and it's in the eyes of the law to make sure that they do their due diligence and scrutiny to make sure that happens. Now, both judges in my case are terrible ass human beings who didn't look at the totality of the situation. They didn't care that I was unlawfully detained. They didn't care. The fact that my kids had to be taken by CPS because I was detained in the first place somehow means that they can take my kids away for 6 months. It somehow means that even if it was wrong for them to detain me and unlawful for them to do so, and they had no cause under the law to do what they did, it didn't matter, because in the eyes of the judge, the sheer fact that you're in my courtroom gives me jurisdiction to pass down the sentence to you. Wrong, right, or indifferent, they don't give a fuck. They want you in the system. So whatever it is, whatever mumbo jumbo they tell themselves, and there's no fucking way to file an appeal, because if you are in any way, shape, or form gonna fight your case, they will give you a lawyer who's not even fucking there, and you have to wait for them to get hold of you, and by then it's already 15 days past the time you can file that appeal. If you don't know how to legally defend yourself, in court. And that's a huge problem, I believe, with society in general, is a lot of us are not geared nor shown how to defend ourselves in a court of law. Yeah. And they tell you, oh, well, you need a lawyer, and, like the justice system will tell you, oh, get a lawyer. But even with a lawyer, some are so fucking incompetent and so shitty, and they're paid. Unfortunately, they're paid by the same people. The state gives them a paycheck too. So unless they're a private practice and they get all their money from winning cases and things like that, they could really give a shit about actually defending you. In fact, they want you to take the deal. They want you to be in their caseload for as long as possible to get a paycheck. Isn't that right there, Mr. Bowden, you piece of shit? So the Bowden Law Firm, which is in... Fuck, where is that in Texas? I know they're in... Where is it? Anyways, so the Bowden Law Firm, primarily Mr. Bowden, I can't remember his first name, but if you have any of the Bowdens, him or his wife, as your head counsel, run the fuck away. I don't care if they try and sue me for defamation of character, because they're shitty. They won't return your phone calls. They don't communicate with you. They really won't defend you either. It doesn't matter that you're innocent. They even told me to my face, it doesn't matter if you're actually innocent. It doesn't matter that you have evidence that it was a false arrest. It does not matter. The sheer fact that you're in the system gives them the ability to, or gives the court the ability to do whatever they want to you, and that is inherently wrong. That is wrong all day. And then the state, Mr. Garza, CPS motherfucker, who lied in court, should be prosecuted to the fullest under the law for lying in court. He provided the court no evidence. There was counter testimony to his document to the court. They wouldn't provide me even the police report, and to this day I cannot get a police report from Copper's Cove. But what I did get was a police report from Corio County Sheriff's deputies, who are the mental health deputies on scene, that literally told them that they would be violating my rights if they took me anywhere, which they did. They illegally went into my vehicle and took my firearm, and they didn't check it into evidence. Here's what they did. They gave it to my wife's chain of command. They have no authority to do so. They have no authority but to take my property and file it and put it in the chain of custody. So what they did was fucking 100% illegal, but because I wasn't charged with a crime and because I didn't get a lawyer immediately, so they somehow justify that in that I have no legal right to defend myself. Well, we're gonna find out when I file that notice of claim, because it's gonna go above all their heads and it's gonna be handled at a higher court. And it's just one of those situations, and I could tell there are many places in the U.S. where that exact same thing is happening to parents, good parents, right now. People that, take care of their kids, that are doing what they can with what they got, and they're working hard, and they're kicking ass, and they're doing whatever it is they got to do. They're having Joe and Jane life, going perfect. And then somebody who's spiteful, somebody who is, that nosy neighbor, whatever, is going to call and say, oh, well, you're not raising your kids right, or you're not doing something that allows these government goons to show up at your house armed and ready to take your kids with zero to no evidence. Like, they don't have to have actual evidence. All they have to have is the word of somebody. And it's really bad in targeting veterans. Veterans particularly are being targeted with mental health code law because it's safer for law enforcement to do that, because all they have to do is say, oh, this guy's got PTSD. This guy's got a history of mental problems. Or this guy's a veteran. He's trained. We don't know what he's going to do. So, we had no choice but to place an emergency detention order. Well, I went and joined the military, and I took an oath to the Constitution, which I still stand by, and I was my understanding that law enforcement takes an oath to the Constitution too. Now, when your rights are violated in this country, there should be a mechanism in place to where you get not just immediate retribution on the fuckers that put you in that situation, whether it's the false witnesses who committed perjury or the law enforcement officers themselves who slapped the cuffs on you. There should be a whole chain of get fucked going on, that, and the prosecutor too. Prosecutors, judges, and law enforcement should not be free from prosecution. Ever. Never. I can't even think of a situation where they can't be sued into oblivion, and they should be. Their pensions gone, the department's pensions are done, because it shouldn't be on the city to pay up every time. It should be on the individual officers, and it should be on the unions that are protecting these officers and providing them with lawyers. That's who should flip the bill whenever a city has to pay out millions or hundreds of thousands. It should be. What I really don't like is individual cities and states put their own nuance on your statute of limitations and how long you have to be able to do certain search and file certain whatever. There should be no statute of limitations on civil rights violations at all. In fact, I can't think of an actual law where there is a statute of limitations on civil rights violations. Now, What they'll tell you is, yeah, there's 2 years. You have 2 years to file in this court. You have 1 year to do this, and you have 2 years. What I've researched is there's no actual statute of limitations on civil rights violations. I have not been able to find it. Now, if you do find one, you want to prove me wrong, please send it to me. That way I can be more educated. I am open to that kind of education lesson. And because I haven't gone to law school, there's a lot that I don't know. But just my observation and just looking at the situations as they are and experiencing law enforcement in this country, it is a sad, sad state of affairs that we live in a time where, despite video evidence, despite catching them committing perjury, law enforcement officers are getting away with murder. They are getting away with crimes. They're getting away with a lot. And it's taken incredible feats of investigative journalism to even catch them doing wrongdoing, or to even get them to acquiesce to the fact that, yes, they did commit crimes, or yes, they fucked up so bad that they feel obligated now to say, hey, we fucked up, or, well, we'll settle out of court, that we didn't do any wrongdoing. No, that doesn't fly anymore. That's no longer cool. It's no longer the thing. People are so sick and tired of seeing that shit in the news. People are so sick and tired of dealing with, another minority gets killed. It's not even minorities anymore. It's just white. It's just people in general who get killed by law enforcement, who get arrested and beaten and bruised and brutalized, and inmates get killed, and all sorts of things that are happening because the incompetency and the brutal nature of law enforcement, that it's gone to the point where people are gonna start to react. And it's not just going to be protests, it's going to be violent protests. And violence met with violence. It's going to be like, and it very well could turn into a class civil war. And here's what I mean, class civil war. A lot of the politicians are going to back law enforcement 100%. Because they're corporate and they don't want to deal with that. Anyways, I'm being called by my wife. I'm going to cut this short, guys. Have a great day. Hit me up, dwelch9627 at gmail.com.